So our guest today is Farouk Oriagba. Farouk, we've known ourselves for over 20 years. And you've got a very interesting, but I'd say powerful story to tell us. You were diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is bone marrow cancer.
Absolutely. Correct.
And this was, what, about a year and something ago?
No, 2.5 years ago.
2.5 years ago.
February 2014.
Wow, you remember the date, no question about that.
I remember the date very well.
Now, before we go into that entire experience, just tell us a bit about yourself. What are you doing with yourself today?
I recently turned 50.
Congratulations.
I'm an investment banker. I've been in financial services for the last almost 30 years. If it was up to me, I'd have retired by now, but it's not in my nature. I think somebody up there has other plans for me. I do a lot of counseling for cancer patients and their families. And ultimately, I wouldn't say I found my calling, but I really enjoy what I'm trying to do here. And I appreciate you inviting me on the show.
Real pleasure.
And if I can make a difference to just one person, one,
yes,
that works for me.
Awesome.
My experiences of also, my experiences during my illness have changed my outlook on life a little bit. You know, some of the things that used to make me tick no longer really matter, and vice versa. Like I said, I found other things that, you know, get me up in the morning and you know, get me out of bed and make me want to do things.
So let's take it to the top again. Let's go to the very beginning of this. You were diagnosed with cancer. How did you discover it? I mean, what led you to that diagnosis?
I was not ill.
Mm-hmm.
I was diagnosed in February 2014. December 2013, I was having a shower. I just had a shower. Mm-hmm. My youngest son, who was going to be just under 2, mm-hmm. he was asleep in bed, and I didn't want to wake him. I sneezed. Mm. But you know, you don't want to sneeze out, so you want to hold it in. Mm. So I held it, and I popped a disc. I slipped a disc.
Wow, in your back?
In my back. Mm. And, you know, as things do, I have 3 sons. 2 are studying in the UK. My youngest is at home. We treated the slip disc. You know, I've played rugby for years. I play squash. I do all the active contact sports. Mm-hmm. So a slip disc at 47 once as well. Maybe it's just time's catching up with the body.
Yeah.
December, I decided that I was being treated, I wanted to recuperate from my slip disc, so I told my kids in London, listen, go on holiday. I'm just going to go somewhere where I don't even have to get up. Mm-hmm. So I did spend Christmas with a family. Come early January 2014, the kids are moaning, Dad, we haven't seen you, we haven't seen you. I said, okay, you know what? It's your mum's birthday in February. I'll come at the end of January. One of them had a rugby game. So I'll pop over to England end of January. And, you know, I'll see everybody at the same time. Everything went fine. Just as it happens, I was having lunch with someone who happens to be a doctor, who happens to be the person who had been my, almost like a personal doctor for the previous 10 years. Uh-huh. So whenever I had, in actual fact, it's actually my ex-wife.
Okay.
So number 1 rule, don't fight your ex-wife. So I was with my ex-wife, and she said, this is your back.
But of course, you're happily married again, that much I know.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Carry on.
Hence the 3rd child.
Yes.
And we're all happy families.
Yes.
You know. And my ex-wife said, this is your back. You know, when I played rugby, she used to look at it and said, let's have a look at this back of yours. Now, I must say, I had done a full medical test in January.
And where was that?
In South Africa.
Okay.
And I got the all clear.
Yes.
But it depends on what you look for. And, you know, like I say, these things, there were so many strange things that involved here because we tested for prostate. You know, when you're over 40, you're a guy, there's certain things you test for.
Yeah.
So I did a simple MRI scan. Now, number one, a lot of us go and do medicals. We don't do an MRI because we believe, you know, it's going to cost an extra $200-300 and it doesn't count. Well, in my case, it most probably saved my life. I did the MRI, didn't think anything about it, came back to Lagos. A week later, my ex-wife calls me, she's crying. She tells me, are you alone? What's going on? She says she's got the results of the scan. I was like, which scan? I'd even forgotten that I had a scan. She said, the one we did in London, the results show that, you know, doctors have a very funny way with words. The images indicate a very high possibility of malignant activity. That's big English. What does it mean?
It just means you have cancer.
Absolutely. A high possibility of cancer, of cancer. When she broke it down, I said, it's not possible. Look at me, you know, it's not possible.
So you were like in shock or
I was, the shock came later. Initially, you're like, nah, there's a problem. And at this point in time, I was still trying to come to terms with it. There must be a mistake. So I jumped on a plane, went to see my doctor, who had just done a medical.
Yes.
And given me back to South Africa
Okay.
and given me a medical. He looked at me and said, no, there's no way you have cancer. You don't have cancer. You know, sometimes when they do these films, maybe there's a speck of dirt or dust on the MRI film. Look at you. You don't have cancer. And we went on like this for a couple of weeks.
Yes.
My oldest sister is married to a doctor. He's a consultant. So I had my consultant in South Africa. I had my ex-wife, who's a doctor. I had my brother-in-law, who's a doctor. And everybody's got their own opinions. In the end, my ex-wife said, and then my mother-in-law got me to see another oncologist.
Okay.
And, you know, they don't like interfering with other people's work, but he said, well, the odds are, if the images say that I've got it, then
You got it.
I got it. I was advised, well, if you want certainty, the only way to do it is go take a biopsy. A bone marrow biopsy is not something I'd wish on my worst enemy.
We went to the break. You were talking about going for a biopsy, and you described it as something you wouldn't even wish on your worst enemy.
I wouldn't.
Tell us about that. Why? What was it all about?
Well, a bone marrow biopsy basically means they take a piece of your bone and they test it. Now, I've had several. I've had two now, but the first one, it was a local anesthetic. And if you think about it, if you're going to get if they're going to remove your tooth, they stick an anesthetic into your tooth. So if you're going to take a piece of my bone, you have to anesthetize my bone, which means putting an anesthetic in there, which means sticking a needle this long.
Wow.
And don't forget, it's got to go into your bone, right? So it's not a thin sewing needle. It's almost like a corkscrew.
Ooh.
So they're sticking a needle this long into your bone just to anesthetize you.
So I'm getting the point that it was very painful.
It was extremely painful.
Wow.
And I was awake the whole period. Needless to say, when they did the second one, they put me out cold. I was never going to have one done.
Yeah.
Anyway, they had the bone marrow biopsy. And it came up and said, yes, I have stage 1.
Okay, so that's fairly early.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Stage 1, multiple myeloma. The reality of the matter was I could have gone another 2-3 years, happily going about my business, and then something happens, and then it spread, and then I realize I'm stage 3, or God forbid, stage 4. Totally different ball game, totally different course of treatment, and so on and so forth. So, I have cancer. What do I do? Everything goes through. It is an emotional burden that you just have to carry. Your whole world's come cascading.
I can imagine.
I didn't tell my wife because I didn't have a solution to the problem. I did tell my mother-in-law because I know that once I told my wife was going to go meet her mother-in-law, her mum, So it was important that my mother-in-law was ready.
Yeah.
I called a couple of close friends. What do we do? You think about your wife, your kids, your parents. I didn't tell my mother. I wrote my will. I called close people around and said, this is my problem. You know, there's no answer to this. It is one hell of a conundrum. It's a big problem. And a lot of people didn't know how to deal with it. I mean, one of my siblings went into complete denial. It's like, you don't have it. That's it. No, that's his way of dealing with it.
I can imagine, yes.
But, you know, as a parent, these are things you have to deal with. There's financial issues. You know, how do I pay for this? Moving on, spoke to the doctor. I was referred to an oncologist in South Africa. That was another problem. Do I go to Dubai? Do I go to London? Do I go to the States? Where do I go?
But even at this point, you didn't even think about Nigeria. Is that because the treatment wasn't available?
The treatment in Nigeria was not available. My experience, as soon as I was told I had cancer, and I called a few friends, I came to face so many different options. Mm-hmm. There's a pastor supposedly in Jos who, you know, everybody knows somebody whose dog's friend's nephew has been through it. Never themselves.
Yes.
It's always a third party. Mm-hmm. There was somebody in Jos who had healed somebody somewhere, and I just had to go see him. There was one person whose brother's sister's friend had cancer, and they ate 20 cucumbers, 14 carrots, 20 lettuces a day, and they're cured. Everybody. There's the imam that I have to go and see. There's the pastor that I have to go and see. And yes, I appreciate the Almighty heals people through different means.
Yep.
But all the means being presented to me at that time, none of them seem to go with me.
But very often God heals through medical practitioners.
Well,
that's
at
what
the
they're
moment,
there for, sure.
in Nigeria, and more so now that I'm actually working with one or two institutions who are focused on cancer, yes. The medical practitioners are not here. Okay. And even now, I mean, I'm still on chemo.
Sure.
And I'll be on chemo for the rest of my life.
Because you've told me that several times.
Yeah, I'll be on chemo for the rest of my life. Yeah. I have to fly out every month to go get I call it my kryptonite. I have to go once a month. Well, now it's going to be once every 3 months, and soon, hopefully, by God's grace, it'll be once every 6 months, and then once a year. But I have to go out. Yeah. The basic stuff, elementary stuff, is not here. And I think we'll come to that later, but I think in Nigeria, we focus on the wrong things. You know, the only reason I'm alive right now, by God's grace, is that I was caught early. Nigerians focus more on the cure as opposed to the early detection, yes. And we'll come to that at some stage.
Absolutely.
So I went abroad. I have a home in South Africa. My wife is South African, so that sort of gave me an option. Not everybody has that option. Yes. I was diagnosed in February. By March, end of March, I was on chemo.
Another thing that I found really, really uplifting, even for me, talking to you all those times, is how positive you were. You always believed that you'll get through it.
I had to cling to something.
Yeah.
I believed that if I did everything that I was told to do, I would come good.
Yeah.
And if that meant chemo, I had to do it.
Yes.
And as painful as it was, I'm not ashamed to say I bawled my eyes out.
Sure.
Not once, not twice. And friends were there with me. Yeah. People came to see me. But the whole chemo experience was very painful. And it was a race against time because it was important to get the number of cancer cells down to a certain level, after which I could then go for a transplant, and then hopefully I'll be done. The bone marrow transplant, in my case, it started off in a very funny way. The reason was, the aim was to get my cancers down to a minimum level, and then do the bone marrow transplant, and then I was done. I didn't need, because I was caught early, I had enough cells. I didn't need a donor.
Okay.
So I had enough of my own cells. So it was a case of we're racing against time. It was important to get the cancer cells down while I still had enough cells for a transplant. This was not happening. So they looked at me physically, they thought I could handle it. They said, you know what we're going to do is we're going to move your transplant forward in between your chemo, and then irrespective of how many cells you've got left, the odds are after your transplant, there'll still be some cancer cells, then you're going to go back onto chemo. As opposed to the transplant being the final thing.
So you're probably even in dread thinking, oh my God, I have to go
back to that.
Wow.
But
okay.
We did it. So I had the transplant, we started on the 15th of August, 2014. Went into hospital, and what it means, a transplant means, bottom line, is like rebooting your computer. They shut you down. They kill every cell in your body. They take some good cells, so they took some of my good cells, you know, so basically they stuck a hole in my neck. Pipe was taking my blood out into like a washing machine, extracting the cells they required and putting it back. And basically, once they've got enough of the plasmas that they need, they then shut your system down. They kill all the cells in your body. Then, and at that point, you got no immunity. You cannot fight anything. A cold could kill you. Somebody sneezing around you could kill you. Then at that point, they put the good cells that they've got, they put them back into your body, and it is hope that they regenerate fast enough and build up your immunity. That's it in a nutshell. I was there for a week. Ironically, the doctor said when I walked out of the hospital, because what they do is once they've done the transplant, they want to get you out of the hospital as soon as possible because there are bugs in the hospital, super bugs, resilient to medication. The doctors walked out, and my wife was wheeling me out of the hospital, and they said, 2 out of every 3 patients end up coming back because when they go out, they pick up some bug,
infection or whatever,
and they end up coming back in. And they said, we'll see you again. I said, you won't see me again. You will not see me again.
Yeah.
I was there from Monday till Friday. I left hospital on the Friday. I went home into isolation. Nobody was around me apart from my wife. We were all wearing masks. I lost, it was the best diet ever. I lost about 8, 9 kgs during that, just in that week. I couldn't eat. You couldn't eat reheated food because the minute if food is cooked and it's set down, there's bacteria, irrespective of whether you heat it up. So and all the time I was, I had sores in my mouth because, you have a lot of, there's a lot of germs in your mouth. That's why if somebody bites you, you have to go get tetanus injections. Yes. So I had sores, I was fighting everything. But by God's grace, and I was having my temperature checked every hour. In 13 days after leaving hospital, even though they said I was going to come back and come with the bug, the test indicated that my cells were now at a level whereby, I could survive on my own. So, I did the transplant. I survived without having to go back in for some other ailment. 13 days after the transplant was completed, I was able to take off the mask and go about my life, although my immunity levels were low, but at least I was out and about, and we monitored it, and that was how I got through that. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I'd say the transplant took out about 70% of my cancer cells, but didn't take them all. So after the dust had settled, I had to go back for another bone marrow biopsy to see what level of cancers were left.
So that whole process of that pain and drilling?
No.
Okay.
Chief, this time I refused. I said, you have to knock me out.
Wow, okay.
They knocked me out. I don't remember anything.
Okay.
1 minute I was talking to the nurse.
And then
next minute I looked around and there was a bit of I could feel like a bandage on my back. It had been done. I didn't feel it. My wife, who was there, was so traumatized because even while I was knocked out, the brain, it's all in the mind. I was out cold. I didn't feel a thing. Apparently, I was fighting the doctors.
Wow.
I was in that much pain. But because I don't remember it, for me, it was just, my wife was traumatized. She was literally in tears. She could not believe that I was supposed to be out cold
Yes.
Yet I was screaming in pain, but I don't remember it. So
And let's focus on your wife and your kids, because, you know, we often think just about you, and your story already itself is very touching. I mean, what you've had to go through, you know, yourself dealing with cancer, the treatments, the pain, the confusion, the fears, the hopes, and all of that. And you've described your wife being traumatized. And of course, they too live with cancer because they live with you. How has that been for them? And how important has been their love, support, care been to your recovery as well?
Without my family, my sister, my wife, my ex-wife, and my siblings, I would not be here. My mother, bless her, she's 76 now. I didn't tell my mother, just to show you how it impacts families. Yeah. I didn't tell my mother about cancer until I'd had my transplant and I'd survived it. Yes. My mother had a mental breakdown. My mother ended up in an asylum home.
Wow. Because of this?
Yes. She had a mental breakdown. And she still, I mean, she still sees a psychiatrist. She's not okay, but she's on medication. Yeah. Because how do you tell a 76-year-old woman that her only son had cancer, but he survived? You see, in her age group, people never survive cancer. All her peers, you know, who had cancer 20, 30 years ago are dead. Yeah. She doesn't appreciate that technology has moved on. Yeah. So when you tell her, even today, I spoke to her yesterday, she said, how's your health? I said, I'm fine. You are lying to me. Family, it's this cancer journey. I mean, a lot of these journeys, and you cannot embark on those without the support of others. It's not something you can do on your own. It is a big, big burden. You doubt yourself, you doubt the Almighty, why me? However, from my point of view, it's changed my whole... Listen, I sat with a guy who's 4 years old. We're being treated. I'm having my treatment, he's having his treatment. I'm almost 50, he's 4. And he's telling you that I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a footballer. Because why? He knows nothing else. Yes. That's the only life he knows. Yes. I have been with people who we were being treated together who are dead. Yes. Now, I was one very moving experience. I was waiting to see my doctor. The lady who normally goes in before me, we see every week, we talk. You know, how are you feeling? She was in a wheelchair, she was from Cameroon. On this particular day, she went in, and on her way out, she was crying. And then I said, what's wrong? She said, oh, the doctor said she can't treat me anymore. It's not fair. She doesn't want to take any more of my money. I should just go home, make peace with the people, because I am going to die. When somebody tells you that, and you look at yourself and you think, actually, I'm okay, Jack. Cancer, one thing I've learned, cancer does not discriminate. It does not decide who it's gonna affect. It can touch anybody. The two things that I have learned, and I keep on telling people, is one, you can increase or decrease your chances of getting cancer by the lifestyle you lead. Yes. I've met someone who's got lung cancer and never smoked. But if you do smoke, the chances you get lung cancer are increased.
There's also passive smoking.
There's passive smoking.
Through other people's
and the environment.
Yes.
So, number one, regular health checks. I mean, I didn't get liver cancer, I didn't get lung cancer, I ended up with bone marrow. And even though I did my checks to save $200, I didn't do an MRI scan. Now, I do an MRI scan for everything. Go for your complete checkup, make it regular. Yes. So that has, that's something I've benefited. I've learned a lot about myself, a lot about people, but if there's any message I can get across to people is, even if you have cancer, it can be defeated, you can overcome it, and you can live a healthy lifestyle. Like I told you earlier on, I went on a 20K run yesterday. So, one, I want to let people know that people can survive cancer, you can live a healthy life, Your attitude says a lot. I'm not going to go around feeling sorry for myself. If I don't tell you, you will not know.
That's true.
But at the same time, if I can come out here, or what really helps me is when people say, listen, could you talk to XYZ because the husband has just been diagnosed with cancer, or the wife has just been diagnosed with cancer, and I get these people on the phone, or they see me, and they look at me and say, listen, you never had cancer. And I'm saying, do you want to look at this video? Do you want to look at these pictures? Because they don't believe that I could have had cancer and come out of it and still be like this. So even the guy, the patient, is feeling that, oh, you know, I can do this. I'll stop feeling sorry for myself. You know, and I believe there was a reason for me to do it, because I'll tell you why. I'm now in complete remission. Unlike a lot of the cancers, you know, bone marrow, there's no cure for it. Because you can't remove all my bones and put a new set of bones in. If it's liver, you can remove it. If it's lung, you can cut it out. Breast, you can cut it out. Bone, I'm with it. But I'll deal with that. I'm still most probably going to outlive a lot of other people. However, you know, I've realized that I have to deal with it. If I can encourage other people to do the same, it's fine. But one thing that always makes me believe that there's more to it. I had my, the scan, the MRI scan we're talking about, I had it on the 3rd of February, 2014. That's when the whole thing began. I went into complete remission on the 3rd of February, 2015.
And a year exactly
to date.
Afterwards. Perhaps that's a great point, a really great place.
You know, I mean, why not a day later? Why not the day before? 3rd of February 2014 to 3rd of February 2015, 365 days, annus horribilis, whatever you want to call it. That was, I don't believe in coincidences. That was just more of a coincidence.
Unfortunately, you know, all great conversations like this will come to an end. But you know something? I thank God for your life. I thank God that He's brought you to this particular point. I thank God that you're using this opportunity to reach out to other people and to help them. And long may you live much longer to do more of that and to help educate people.
Amen to that.
God bless your efforts and your healing.
Thank you.
Well, audience, I hope you've really been touched by today's program. You've learned a lot about how you can, with a very strong spirit, a belief in God, and a determination to succeed, you can overcome even one of the worst diseases out there, cancer. In this particular case, bone marrow cancer. For anybody who's still a sufferer, there is still hope, and we'll keep praying for all of you. Stay blessed. Until next time.